DC. And it's my absolute honor and privilege to have a chance to chat with my dear friend, our colleague, Yariel Valdés Gonzalez, who is in Miami. And I'll start off just giving a really quick introduction to Yariel. He won asylum here in the US last September, and he was in the custody of US Immigration and Customs Enforcement for almost a year. Even though he won asylum last September, he was only released from ICE custody on March 4th, so just a little bit over 2 months ago. And we've been chronicling Yariel's story from the day he asked for asylum in the US last March. And it's a real honor to have Yariel here. So welcome, Yariel. How are you?
I'm great, Michael. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. It's a big pleasure to speak with you, to speak with the readers of Late. It's absolutely a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story. So I want to start just by asking you, tell us about yourself, your life in Cuba, and then we can talk about why you decided to leave the island and come to the US. So just for our viewers and for our readers, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you did back in Cuba.
Oh, okay. First of all, I would like to apologize with all the readers because my English is not too good. So if I feel a little lost with the answers, please remember this is my first interview in English, so I'm trying to do
You'll
my
be
best.
fine. You'll do fine, I'm sure. You'll be fine.
Okay, so my name is Yariel Valdés Gonzalez, as you said. I'm a gay man from Cuba. I am 29 years old, and I am a journalist. I graduated on 2014 of Central University in Cuba, and I used to work for the official media in Cuba, and also I used to work for the independent press in Cuba. As you said, I won an asylum here in United States because of the persecution that I suffered in my own country because of my work as an independent journalist. I'm now here in Miami, living with my family. But as you said, the situation in Cuba is so difficult right now uh, for the press, especially for the independent press, because the regime, the Communist Party, control everything in Cuba. Uh, if your work doesn't respond to the interests of the government of the regime, uh, your life will be miserable. You know, the Cuban people live in a dictatorship. You should know that. Um, a dictatorship more than 16 years or 60 years, sorry. And the condition of the country for the human rights is horrible. In Cuba, there is not a freedom of expression. In Cuba, there is no freedom of press. So everything is controlled by the regime, and if you are not with them, they didn't recognize your work. They didn't recognize you. So they are trying to push you back, and everything is it will be end for you.
Mhm.
So in Cuba, I work with several medias. I work in the newspaper of my city. I used to work as a radio and television presenter, and I became in that time I became to collaborate with some independent digital press. So mm, the official press in that time sanctioned me because of my work as independent journalist. So I was working for the official press at the same time I was working with the independent press. So the Cuban press doesn't like that. So they put me a sanction of without work and salary without in 1 month. So I couldn't work, and I couldn't get paid in 1 month because they decided to sanction me because of my work as an independent journalist. At the same time, they expelled me for the Young Communist Union, and they closed my contracts as a radio and television presenter.
Mhm.
They dismissed after that. They dismissed me from the newspaper
When you say
because
they, is that the government dismissed you from the newspaper?
yeah, they said if you wanted to be with us, you have to stop your work as independent journalist.
I see.
So you need to choose if you are with us or against us.
Okay.
And I said, okay, I prefer to be an independent journalist because I'm with that labor. I really feel that I am a journalist. I'm not doing communist propaganda anymore with you. That's what I'm doing in the newspaper work. It's only propaganda. You are not doing journalism. So I decided to work for independent press, and I started to work in some medias, for example, on Cuba, El Toque, Tremenda Nota, who, by the way, is the Cuban partner of the Blade. Tremenda Nota is also known as the magazine of minorities in Cuba. They
Yeah.
cover all the LGBT issues in Cuba, and I used to work for them. I used to make photos and videos for the internet. I used to work for another website. It's called Yucabyte. It's about the new technologies in Cuba. uh, Big articles, investigation articles about the new technologies in Cuba. And I also used to work for Cubanet. This is a website based here in Miami, and it covers all the political problems, all the opposition, all the really the true reality, the truly reality of the Cuban people. You can find it if you go to Cubanet. So because of that work with the independent press since 2015, I remember. Uh, so the security agents of Cuba interrogated me. They imprisoned me. They pressured me to stop my work. uh, they keep me under surveillance, and also my colleagues and my family. So they also put me a regulation to prohibit me to live in the country
Mm.
for journalistic events. So they can do that, and they did it to me. I was living all the time in fear because it's very dangerous, because the regime is a brutal force. It's like a brutal force against the people who doesn't agree with them, and doesn't agree with their ideas or their politics. So I was living in Cuba very afraid, really very afraid to finish in a prison. That was my biggest fear in Cuba, to be in a prison for my work. And actually, there is some colleagues that they are suffer prison. They are suffering a lot of bad things right now
Mhm.
of the in Cuba because of their work. I see that every day on the social media, and that's the horrible situation for the independent press
I want
in
to ask,
Cuba.
you talked about that you were not allowed to leave the country. And I know that one of the ways that the Cuban government punishes folks who are critical of it is the term is regalado, as you know, where they're not allowed to leave the country. I had my own experience, kind of a reverse experience about a year ago when I was not allowed into the country and I was detained at the airport in Havana for 7 hours and then flown back to the U.S. And so one of the ways the Cuban government targets folks who were critical of it, as you said, is by restricting travel. So I know you had quite a kind of a dramatic experience leaving Cuba to get out of the country. So talk about that. How were you able to actually get out of the country and go to where you ended up going, which we'll talk about in a minute. But how did you leave Cuba?
Okay, I had a regulation on my profile in the immigration system. So they put that regulation. So when you go to the airport and you try to going out to the country, the officers tells you, you can go out because I have a restriction for you here. And that's the state of security that put that restriction, and you aren't allowed to go to the outside of the country. They do that because they don't want you go to, for example, journalistic events, to participate some forums when you are supposed to talk about the situation of Cuba. Your voice can be heard outside of Cuba, and they can control that. So they are trying to stop that. And I was trying to go to a journalistic event in Colombia. I was invited for EAFIT, a Colombian university based on Medellin, and they are trying to stop that. So I had an interrogation with them the other day after my birthday. They told me, I know you are going to go to Colombia, and we know everything. We know the people who go before, and they just knew everything about me. They knew everything about my life, where I'm going, where I spend my time, who I will live with. So they know everything about my life. So but I thought I have to get out of here because I was suffering so much for that. And I said, I this is my opportunity. I can lose it. So I asked for a meeting with them, and I told them that I'm not going to Colombia. Okay, I'm going to Mexico, and you won't see me anymore. So that's what I'm saying.
Why did you say you were going to Mexico?
Because my father lives there.
Okay.
So I'm going to visit my father, and I will stay there. I won't come back anymore. You won't see me anymore. And under that condition, they lift the regulation, and I was able to escape
So
from Cuba.
they wanted to get rid of you, basically.
Yeah, yeah. I was that day was horrible. Those days before the for me to getting out of Cuba was very difficult, because I was checking all the time if my regulation was lifted or not. I was really afraid in the airport, because they can show up and say, "What are you doing? You are going to that place. You lied to us."
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I have no choice. I have to do that, because that was my opportunity to escape from the country, and that's what I did. I went to Colombia, and I spent there like a month in that journalistic course. I also make some work in the Colombian press, and then I traveled to Mexico, and after a few months, I entered to United States for seeking asylum.
Why did you decide to ask for asylum in the United States, especially with the Trump administration's policy towards migrants? I know the first time we met, we did reporting on LGBTQ migrants in Tijuana and Mexicali, but why did you want to come to the United States and ask for asylum? So talk about that a little bit.
Okay. for being honest, uh, like a lot of people, I never think to come here, but recently, because of my problems, because of my work, I used to work for some media here in United States, Tremenda Nota, Cubanet. I also started working with you with the Washington Blade, covering, the LGBT agenda. And okay, I think I thought that United States is the best place for feeling the freedom. This is a place when the human rights are respect. Even though when this time is a very complicated time for immigration, I felt that my place was here. I said, oh, okay, I'm working for the media of United States. I think they can help me. I think that they can give me the protection that I need. And United States has his own policy again about immigration, but they respect the human rights, and the press is really free here. You are allowed to say wherever you want, because it's a free country. And that's was the idea for me to come here and ask for the protection of United States.
One of the things I think that's most shocking to folks who have followed your story, it's certainly shocking to me, having been with you throughout your process, is that you were in ICE custody for almost a year. Um, talk about that. I mean, that's, for a lot of people, that's just unconscionable that that would happen. So just talk about what your experience was like being in ICE custody for that long. Just kind of walk us through what that was like for you.
Okay. As you said, I spent in ICE custody 11 months. I arrived the country on March 27 of 2019, and I was in the ICE custody to March 4th of 2020. Uh, this time was also a terrifying experience for me, because I've never been so long time in prison and being judged for asking help. So I was in four prisons in United States. I was in California, I was in Mississippi, and two jails in Louisiana. Uh, in Louisiana was the worst part of the my process, because some officials there were racist. The food was horrible. We can't receive visits in that detention. I was on Bossier Parish Correctional Center. It was really, really bad. The conditions there for the immigrants are terrible. And also the agency eyes don't give me the opportunity to be released under the parole. And even though when my family was ready to receive me here in Miami, I have all support of them, even though the agency refused to give parole for me and for all the immigrants there who entered legally to United States.
Did they
I
tell
have
you the issue with parole? Did they tell you you didn't qualify for that, or was it just a blanket policy that ICE had in Louisiana? Do you know why you were denied parole?
okay. When I finished my credible fair interview, that is the one of the first steps in the asylum process. They gave me a okay, you are credible. We believe in your story, and they give me a paper saying that I can apply for parole. I need to send to them some papers, some documents, proving my family, all kind of that. I tried to do that, but I only had 1 day for sending the papers from the parole interview. So I tried to do it.
You only had 1 day to send the.
Yeah, yeah. They give me some documents, and they asking for those documents, and you have to present that in one interview that we have that day, and that day was the other day.
Okay.
So I tried to get those documents, but my family sent it to them by fax.
Okay.
But after a few days, there was an interview. They never interview with me, and they just send it. Your parole was denied
Okay.
because you couldn't prove something. You couldn't satisfy the ICE requirements for
And even
being.
though you received the application the day before, like.
Yeah, and the thing is, I didn't know that there there was 5 states here in United States that ICE doesn't give parole to the people.
Mm.
Like a lot of years, they are denying parole to everybody, even though when you have the conditions and the people is going to release you,
Mm.
it's going to uh, you are going to be in your family house or your friends. They don't give you parole for anybody. I had a lawyer, and she said they are not giving parole to anybody. So there was at that time some demand. The SPLC center.
The Southern
Uh,
Poverty Law Center.
yeah, they are fighting with them for us, and you need to respect your own law, because you said that you have the parole for the people, but you are denying parole for those immigrants there without reason.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to respect your own law. That's what they are saying.
Yeah.
That fight ended up with a victory for the SPLC, and they are trying now, that reality, the parole now is they are giving some parole, some
Yeah.
immigrants uh, at this time. But in my time, when I was there is no parole for you. You have to wait all the time here in our detention. You must finish your process here in detention.
Yeah.
We are not going to release you and do your process, your asylum process, in freedom. So you have to be here and end up. If you want, okay, you will be released. But if you don't, you will be deported to your home country.
And that was your biggest fear all along, was being deported to Cuba, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I was in contact with you all the time. You texted me, I call you, and you told me about the situation of the independent press in Cuba. And I
Yeah.
really I left my country with a very bad flavor in my mouth, in my heart, about everything in my life. And I was very afraid to be deported. Every day
Yeah.
was a fighting against that. I was trying to be positive all the time, but sometimes I feel lost. I feel so depressed.
Mhm.
It was a very hard time for me,
Yeah.
because I was alone. I had the support of you, of the blade, of my family, but I was alone there.
Yeah.
And I even though when I was with a lot of people in the same situation, uh, I had a real fear to be deported to Cuba.
Mhm. Just want to throw this out there. I know folks have some questions, so at the end, I'll go ahead and ask those to you. we're getting a few questions coming in. So at the end of this, I'll read those to you. So talk about one of the things that I personally find incredibly inspirational from what you did while in ICE custody, and I know a lot of other folks did as well, was that you actually wrote from inside ICE detention. And we published a lot of those stories. You did interviews with not only with The Blade, but with Spanish language media in Miami. So talk about why was that important for you, Yariel, to be a journalist from the inside, from inside ICE detention? Why did you want to do that?
Okay. First, it was an exercise to keep my mind occupied, you know. But then I saw some real and cruel histories in that detention. I made two. Oh, sorry. I made two gay men's in my journey, and I interview them for the Blade. I think that their story has to be heard about the persecution for being gay in Central America. It's completely unacceptable. They are being persecuted and harmed so badly for being gay, and
Mhm.
those histories really inspire me. For I said I need to tell this. I need to publish their story, and I interview them. I know them, their life, their fears. So I send it to you, and the Blade publishes, and it was also to help them too in their process, sharing their fears, sharing their feelings, their situation about the gay community in Honduras and Guatemala, because those guys were from that country. And then after that, I also wrote an article about the Louisiana conditions. I wrote an article, was published on the Blade page,
Mhm.
uh, telling about the asylum process in that detention, the conditions of the center there, how I feel, how was the food, how was the treatment of the officer, how was the health care. So I try to interview some immigrants there, and we make the story, and I publish it. We publish it because without you it will be impossible. But uh, as I said, the first thought was this story is good, is strong, so I have to tell it. So the journalist inside of me never stopped thinking, and we published that. We after that we published another article about in December,
Mhm.
and I try to keep writing inside of the prison. Actually, I had a diary.
Yeah.
I I was writing not every day, but because every day things are not in the prison. The life is it could be very boring. We don't have to tell everything. Well, we have to tell everything, but no every day that things happen.
Mhm.
So the most important things I try to write it down, and we also published. It was in one day. It was horrible for us. It was a hunger strike
Right.
uh,
Right. Yeah.
in that detention in August. There was a horrible day for us because some partners start to make a hunger strike um, for protesting for the conditions, for the immigration system in that jail.
Yeah.
It was a very difficult day, and I tried to tell you everything that was happened, and you fortunately you posted an article about that day, about the officers spreading uh, paper
Pepper spray.
gas
Yeah.
through the immigrants, beating them, forcing to having food. To it was very complicated day, and I was happy to tell you, and you tell to the world what was happening.
Talk about how the I've read some of your diaries, and we're hoping to publish them at some point. But one of the ones that I've read, you talk about the warden at Bossier having a meeting with you because he read your article. He read some of, and you were nicknamed afterwards, that who wrote the article, El del Artículo. I laugh hysterically when I think of it. So congratulations for your infamy on that. Talk about that moment when the warden had a meeting with you, because I think that really highlights the impact that you had in your reporting from inside. So talk a little bit about that. That experience.
After that article about Luciana, about Bossier, uh, uh, one officer called me, and I thought that was a legal visit with my lawyer. And when I arrived to the desk, it was one officer, and he started to asking me uh, if I had some problems in the facility.
Mm-hmm.
And we start talking, and after a few minutes I find out that he was the boss, the captain of the prison, because he received a phone call that somebody told him that in his prison they are wearing they were violating the human rights of the immigrants. So he was very worried about it, and he was saying that I was saying lies in that article, and we had a big discussion. Uh, it was a conversation. He was respectful. He was sometimes I felt that he could understand my point of view. Sometimes we uh, we make we had a conversation about the conditions in the prison, about the immigration system. He said that he wasn't allowed to change the judge and to change the ICE officers, but we talked. I explained it to them, my fears, the conditions there, and I left that meeting with the feeling that the things will change in some point.
Mm-hmm.
But after a few days, after a week, the situation was the same.
Okay.
So it was really disappointing to me. But at least some of them read the article. They worried, and they were now, know how ICE was and Bossier House treating his immigrants, and he was worried about it. And we talked, but after that, nothing happened. No, not immediately, but I think it was the first step to change the things in Bossier.
And I think folks can thank you specifically for that, because your reporting really, brought your firsthand account really, brought some accountability to what was going on there. So I want to fast forward a little bit. You won Asylum on September 18th last year. I remember the call vividly. You called me and you screamed in the phone to me, "We won." I started crying, as I do a lot. But your ruling was appealed. So that must have just been devastating for you when you found out that your case was appealed and you were going to be in custody until this resolved itself. So talk about the 5 months you were in ICE custody after you won asylum, because I imagine that was the most difficult period for you. So talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was the hardest part of being detention, knowing that I won my asylum and ICE didn't release me. I was waiting every day after I won to the door opens and the officers say my name to be released. But that didn't happen. I have to wait 5 more months in detention because ICE didn't believe that I deserve an asylum. So they appealed the ruling of the judge to the Board of Immigration Appeal in Virginia.
Mhm.
So technically, they had to release me because the law said if you want asylum, you will be released. But with
They
the
did.
actual,
They did.
but even though when you are in appealing or you ICE appeal your case, your right is to be released because you want the asylum. So they didn't do that. They keep me in detention for 5 more months after I won my asylum because they don't want me here, and they try to push me away. They put the appeal in Virginia. My case was reviewed for 3 judges, uh, and then decided to they upheld the rulings judge again. They agreed with the judge decision. It was a judge here from Miami who gave me the asylum.
Mhm.
So they agreed. They said that it wasn't any mistake in the judge ruling. So with that decision, after 5 months, I was released because I won like 2 times.
Right.
I won my asylum 2 times, and 4 judges reviewed my case.
Yeah.
So that's really a really hard time. That was those months were very difficult for me because I was thinking, where am I really deserve this 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 process. I really deserve to be here. What am I gonna do if I lose? It was very difficult for me because I was
Mhm.
very afraid. And I was seeing how hard they are fighting against me. So I'm just here asking for your help because I needed help. So, and you are trying to deport me and you're trying to expel me from the country. You didn't see my story. You don't believe that. You are trying to deport me no matter what. You are not seeing my real problems. You are not watching the news. You're not watching the the situation in Cuba, the human rights in Cuba, the situation for independent press in Cuba. So I was asking, what am I here? Why? Is this real?
Mhm.
What are you thinking? You are not seeing the reality against your your face.
Yeah.
And it was really confusing for me because I was fighting all the time, every minute, every hour, against my feelings, against my mind. It was a really hard times when I was depressed, when I was crying alone. It was really hard. I think was the hardest part for being detention. Those 5 extra months.
But ultimately, you won. Thank God, you won.
Yeah.
And March 4th, you were released. And I had the honor of picking you up, and there was a lot of drama leading up to that. As you know, I'm going to try to make this a little bit lighthearted. So the backstory for folks who don't know is that Yariel called me that you were released on a Wednesday. You called me on a Monday saying I'm getting out, so I flew to Louisiana, flew to Mississippi near where you were. The morning that you were released, I slipped downstairs and I fractured my arm, my left arm. And one of the more funny parts of this whole ordeal was that you called me to confirm you were getting out. You had no idea that I had broken my arm. You called me when I was in the hospital ER in Natchez, Mississippi. They patched me up, but you had no idea. And I said, I broke my arm. I'm okay. I'm getting out. And I will be there to pick you up after this whole ordeal. That had to happen a few hours before you were released. So I picked you up with a huge arm in a thunderstorm. It was pouring rain, but you were waiting there, ready to go, and that was it. So talk about that moment. And there's a picture of us in the car. So how did that? Talk about that moment when you were finally able to leave and start living your life. That moment. So what were you feeling at that moment when you left River in Louisiana?
Okay, that day was crazy, and
Yes, it was.
it was amazing too, because I really couldn't believe that I was released. So that day I had to go back to the court in order to close the process. I was really scared that day because I didn't know what's going on, what's gonna happen now.
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting in the court in front of the judge, in front of the same government lawyer, and I was asking what is going next, what is happening. I didn't know that, but fortunately, the judge ordered my release, and I was released that day on March 4th,
Mm-hmm.
to around 2 o'clock. It
Yeah,
was it was raining a lot. It was
to say
like
the least. To say the least. Yes.
yeah, it was like hurricane in
It was
Louisiana.
seriously like a hurricane hitting. It was awful.
And you went to pick me up to the River Correctional Center when I was. Uh, we ran into the rain. It was was wonderful for
With
me
my
to be
broken
inside.
arm and everything else.
Yeah,
Yes.
you breathing the air, the fresh air,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
feeling the rain in my face. Uh, Even though when we run, it was it was it was amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we spent that night in New Orleans, and then we fled to Miami on March 5,
Yeah.
uh, and here we are since then.
We are, absolutely. So talk about your life in Miami. And also you were released right before the coronavirus shut down. So what a time for you to be released. So talk about what's your life like in Miami now, in spite of this lockdown and everything. So talk about your new life in Miami.
Okay. This life is wonderful. Is wonderful here, even though when we are in the lockdown, I can't compare the time in prison with this lockdown here, because I'm with my family, and I talk with them every day. My family in Cuba, and stay at home for me is not so complicated. I only go out for buying some groceries with my family. Of course, using the whole protection, the gloves and the mask. But I try to be occupied here at home. I'm trying to do things at home, I'm trying to write some articles to the blade to cover in the LGBT community here in Miami and in other countries. Actually, I'm writing an article about Cuba right now. I hope soon you will read the article. And that's it. Because of the lockdown, I couldn't make some things. But even though I tried to make some tramits, I already have my social security number. I am learning how to drive because I didn't
I was going
know.
to ask you about that. I know when we talk, you're always talking about you want to learn how to drive. How is that going? How is that?
Well, I already passed my written test.
Fantastic.
I
I'm thrilled to hear that.
Yeah, I made it. I passed the written test, and I'm practicing here in the condo, in the parking of the condo, with a golf cart. I can't drive a car yet, so I'm trying to practice in a golf car. And when I got my restricted license to practice in a real car, but now we can do that because the office are closed, and we are trying to give a little step every day.
Mhm.
But the conditions are already complicated. The situation is we are not in the in a normal time. But
Yeah.
even though we try to protect ourselves because it's the most important thing, uh, no going outside without reason. But the life is better now, really, absolutely.
Yeah.
Even though when I am in lockdown, I really feel I am alive right now because I was very miserable
Mhm.
a few months ago.
One of the things your mother always told me, and I talk to your mother pretty regularly, she called you her warrior, and that sticks with me a lot. So, how's your mom doing? I know she was worried sick about you during this whole process. She must be so incredibly proud of you. So,
Yeah.
how, how's your mom doing?
Oh, my mom is great. Actually, before start our conversation, she was texting me.
Oh, really?
Uh, yes,
What was she?
and I said to her, we talk later because I had an interview with Michael and with the readers of the Blade. But she's fine. She is fighting with the lockdown too, with the quarantine in Cuba. The situation there is going to maybe it's a little better right now, but they are facing the situation with no food, with no supplies. The situation there is really really complicated, but
Mhm.
she's fine. She's happy to see me in freedom. She is anxious to be here,
Yeah.
and of course I'm anxious to hug her and spend a few days with her here.
Mhm.
So that's we are waiting for the lockdown. It's over,
Yeah.
and we can share a few times together because in September it will be 2 years since I go out of Cuba. So
Well,
it's been a lot of time.
let's hope she can see you soon, and send her my love, please. Your mother's an amazing woman who's been through a lot and adores you. So please send her my love. So a couple quick questions, and then I have a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you from folks who are watching. So you've been out of ICE custody now for like a little over 2 months. So what are your plans now that, obviously we're in this lockdown right now? It's a little weird, but once things get back to normal, what do you hope to do now that you have asylum here in the U.S.? What are your future plans
Okay,
in the U.S.?
my dream, my really dream is working as a journalist here. You know, that is my passion. I really hope to have the opportunity to connect with the media here and keep working with you guys, help another immigrants or asylum seekers to understand the immigration system, support them based on my experience, based when I pass. So I would like to help the gay community with my work and keep fighting for our rights. Yeah, this country has a lot of rights, and we have everything here. But certainly there are some situations yet that the country hasn't getting over, and I will be pleased to have that to work on it, to help the community and to work as a journalist. That's really my favorite part. And this the my favorite thing on this country is the freedom, that you feel the freedom on everything, knowing that anybody is going to persecute you anymore from your ideas or from your work. That's it's a great feeling. And I'm still getting used to it. It's a process
Yeah,
because it's you have to change your mind, and it's but definitely it's a great feeling to be free and to feel that freedom in every place that you're going.
absolutely. So that goes into my question. Kevin Knapp, our editor, wanted me to ask you this question. He texted me earlier. So I'm just going to read it. Given the way you were treated by our government, do you regret coming to the US? And how has the experience changed your opinions about the US's reputation as a free society? Experiencing what you experienced, does that change your opinion about the US in any way, given what you've gone through?
Yeah, I thought about it so many times when I was in detention. I when I went to sleep and I put my head on the bed, uh, I asking that all the time. Did I did it right? Did I did it wrong? Did I am really in the good place, in the right place, and but I had that image of United States. It's a great country, and I'm still believe that. But when I was in the process, I feel disappointed in some points. I I really thought that it would be so hard fight. I thought that it would be different, but the current policy right now is too aggressive with the immigrants, and now it's still complicated to me to understand if you are coming here to seek an asylum because you have problems in your country. uh, they should treat you at least with respect. And I was asking that all the time, uh, because the immigrants has helped so much to build this country. And I think that the actual policy is not right. So I've never come here if I have real problems. If I haven't real problems in my country, I've never uh, left my family away, left my boyfriend in that time. If if I don't have had a real fear for my life,
Mhm.
I have no choice. So I had to keep strong and thinking, you have to fight. And I think this is a current policy because the laws of this country, protect the immigrant, protect the asylum seekers. And I think, and I hope that it will be a dark age, a dark years of this country. But this country really needs to change that, to respect more the immigrants, and see with more respect with the asylum seekers, to understand their situation and not treating them like a bad people. We are not bad people. Before judge me, you have to look my life, to look my country, to look my real conditions. And for me, uh, I'm not coming here because of the money. I'm not coming here to have a big house, or have a car. I come here. My American dream is based on the freedom. That's the only thing that I need. So I don't need money. I don't need cars and all that stuff. The important thing to me is my freedom, and this country has it yet. So I hope that the answer was.
Yeah. And then one final question, and this is a very lighthearted one. Somebody asked about the ID card that we had on the screen that you received. I think that was the one from, I think it was from Bossier. Does every ICE detainee get one of those ID cards?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You get your ID when you get to every detention center. They give you an ID. That's your identification. You have your number, in your prison number, and your ICE number. You have a number of your case. That's you are a number, and that's it. You have to show it for everything, to go to the doctor, to go to the court, to go to visit your lawyer. That's your ID and your identification, and you have to wear every time you're going out, out of the dorm, to do some activities like recreation or go to the library. Yeah, you need to ID for everything.
And do you like put it in your pocket, or do you like pin it to your uniform? Like how do you have it on your person?
They have a clip, know, and you put it in your pocket here, or inside of the pocket. And when the officers, okay, show me your ID, you have to show them, and okay, that's you. And even though for receiving the commissary, the food that you can buy there, so you have to show your ID.
Nice. And that has to be with you at all times, right?
Yeah. Well, inside of the dorm, you don't need it.
But when you
are there.
Yard
yeah, but some activities, for example, in the last detention, you need to give them the ID for getting the tray, the food tray.
I see.
So you are in line, and you have to keep your ID with you, because you have to give them the ID for and they give you the food tray. That's the tragedy for anybody get double trays.
I see. And I know the food there was horrible too. I saw pictures of it. So I'm sure you don't miss that either. The bad food that you were eating, I'm sure you don't miss the instant soup and the hot, all that stuff.
No, not at all. I don't want to see a soup again in front of me anymore.
And thank you for your aunt's an amazing cook, so she's taking great care of you, I know. So, so we're going to wrap it up. So I really want to thank you, Yariel, for everything you've done, for sharing your story with us, for opening yourself up to folks who've been following your case from day one, and for being an inspiration not only to us here at The Blade, but to me personally. It's been an absolute honor and privilege to be on this journey with you, and I know that we're going to see wonderful and great things from you moving forward. So we hope to have you in Washington very soon. Once
I
everything
hope.
calms
I
down.
really hope. But the honor is mine to have you as my friend, as my colleague, as my brother, because you literally saved my life. Because your support and the blade support, it was amazing in that time for me. I was feeling protected with your help and with the blade's help. And of course, I would like to thank my lawyer, Lara Nashimovitz, and of course my family here, and my family in Cuba, and my colleagues in Cuba, all the people who to help me in this process, to help me here in the United States and help me in Cuba, even though when they are in danger right now, but they don't forget me and they help me all the time. I really thank you, and I'm really thank all of them. Thank you.
Your story has just begun. We're going to continue to follow it and look for great things from Yariel in the future. So thank you so much, and we'll be sharing this online. And thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers. Okay.